Today I had a very simple plan. Plant a few things near the house, nothing complicated. I thought I would prepare the soil, put the plants in the ground, water everything, and probably finish before it got too hot. But before I could begin, I had to get permission from the real owner of the yard. Well, this is my cat. She does not exactly help with the work, but she makes sure nothing happens here without her supervision. Every morning, she walks around the property and checks whether everything is still where it should be. She investigates the garden, the walls, the hose, and anything new that has appeared overnight. Today, the new and suspicious thing was me carrying plants and gardening tools across her territory. I had brought home several small plants and wanted to create a new green row beside the house. They looked so small in their pots that I honestly thought the whole job would take about an hour. Looking back, that was a very optimistic estimate. While I was deciding where everything should go, my cat found a comfortable place above the yard and continued watching me from a safe distance. We live in a quiet village in Turkey, but it is never completely still here. Some days, hardly anyone passes the house. On other days, you suddenly see neighbors, birds, goats, dogs, and cats, all within a few minutes. Even when people are quiet, there's always some kind of life moving around you. That is one of the things I enjoy about living here. A simple morning in the yard rarely feels completely empty. Eventually, I had to stop watching everyone else and start working. The soil looked easy enough from a distance, but it had already become dry and much harder than I expected. Before planting, I like to place all the pots on the ground first. It helps me see what the finished row might look like and whether I am leaving enough room between the plants. It is much easier to move a pot now than to dig up a plant later because it ended up in the wrong place. Small plants can look a little lonely when they are first planted, so it is tempting to put them very close together, but they will hopefully grow much larger. They need room for their leaves, light, and air. At least that is the plan. The Turkish summer still has to agree with me. For each plant, I made a hole slightly wider than the soil around its roots. I also tried not to plant it much deeper than it had been growing in the pot. It can feel safer to bury a plant deeply, but covering the base of the stem with too much damp soil is not always helpful. The first plant took me a while. I put it in the hole, adjusted the soil, looked at it from another angle, and decided it was not straight. So I adjusted it again. The second plant was a little easier. By the third one, I was already working with the confidence of someone who had apparently been doing this her entire life. My cat had lost interest by then. I think she realized that nothing edible was going to appear immediately, so she left me to deal with the consequences of my own decisions. I gently pressed the soil around each plant with my hands. I did not pack it down too firmly. I just wanted the plants to stand upright and remove any large air pockets around the roots. The work slowly became repetitive. Dig a hole, place the plant, and bring the soil back around it. Adjust everything and move on to the next one. After a while, you stop thinking about every movement. You just continue until you look behind you and realize that the empty ground has started to change. A small row was finally appearing. The plants still look tiny, especially against all that dry soil. From a distance, they were almost difficult to see. But I like this stage. The result is not impressive yet, and you still have to imagine what the area might look like a few weeks from now. Hopefully, it will become greener and fuller. Of course, That depends on whether the plants survive, the heat, my cat, and my gardening skills. The last one may be the greatest danger. Somewhere in the middle of the work, I started remembering why I had originally planned to buy only a few plants. At the garden center, every little pot looked light and harmless. At home, you discover that every single one needs its own place, its own hole, and several more minutes of work under the sun. Still, once half the row was finished, I did not want to stop. Seeing the completed section made me curious about how the entire area would look when everything was finally in the ground. The last plants went in much faster than the first ones. Not necessarily because I had become an expert. By that point, I simply really wanted to finish. But the yard was beginning to look different. That morning, there had only been a patch of dry soil. Now there was a small garden bed. It was still modest, maybe even a little uncertain, but it was a beginning. Then came my favorite part, the first watering. After spending so much time working with dry soil, even the sound of water feels refreshing. I try to direct the water close to the base of each plant instead of spraying it over the leaves. A very strong stream can wash away the loose soil and expose the roots. So I water slowly. Dry ground can absorb water surprisingly fast. Sometimes the surface looks wet, but the soil underneath is still almost completely dry. That is why I return to each plant more than once and give the water time to sink deeper. During hot weather, early morning or evening is usually the most comfortable time for watering. Less water disappears immediately into the heat, and the plants have some time to recover. Of course, real days do not always follow the perfect schedule. Sometimes you simply finish the work whenever you can. As soon as the water touched the ground, the whole area changed. The soil became darker, the green leaves stood out more clearly, and the row finally looked finished. This is usually the moment when I forget how long the work took. I just stand there with the hose, look at the plants, and start thinking that maybe I should have bought a few more. No, that idea can wait until the next visit to the garden center. By the end of the day, the animals had returned to the yard. Some came to inspect the result. Others were probably just passing through and had no interest in my little garden at all. Either way, the new plants were accepted without any serious complaints. My cat has not announced her final decision yet. And that was another very ordinary day in Turkey. I went outside to plant a few things and somehow spent most of the day in the garden. Now all I can do is water them, watch them carefully, and see how this little space changes over the next few weeks. And of course, hope that tomorrow morning every plant is still exactly where I left it.